So tonight we're going to speak about Parsha Terumah. Last week the Parsha was really dedicated to the follow-up of the giving of the Aseret Dibros, the Ten Commandments, right, with Mishpatim. Mishpatim, as you remember, as we go through it, began with it's a Parsha packed with Mishpatim. It's well named. It's packed with the laws of the relationship between man and his fellow man. Interestingly enough, and we won't take time, it's for another shir to go into it, is the very last of the Mishpatim is something that is about man and God, right? Which is Basar B'Chalav. Why we don't eat meat and milk together has nothing to do with our relationships between us and our fellow. It seems completely out of place. But we won't go into that now. We'll say that for another time. This week's Parsha, Terumah, begins a very lengthy dissertation on the elements of our relationship in the desert with God, the holiness of God, and with about the building of the Mishkan. It's been pointed out by people greater than myself that there's a great deal more time spent on the Mishkan than there was on the creation of the universe. Creation of the universe. Yeah, many more. Many more chapters, many more words. You'll see. It's going to go on for another 3 parshas. Yeah. Whereas the creation of the world is, 7 chapters. We're there very quickly. Not chapters, but we deal with it before we get out of Bereshis. It's not even. I don't think it's even half of Bereshis.
It's very small, just the front.
Right, that's the creation of the universe. The Mishkan is much longer. Why is it much longer? Well, I think there's many reasons given. Obviously, it is the link between the finite and the infinite. And it is the conclusion of really 2 books of the Torah. The purpose of creation, right, and the purpose of the exile in Egypt, and the purpose of Matan Torah, right, comes to a conclusion at the end of the book of Shmos. Right. The book of Shmos is called the book of redemption. Well, we've been redeemed from slavery now for a few parshas already. So the book should have ended. There's a question, why does it continue? The answer why it continues is that redemption of the body is not complete until a redemption of the whole individual is complete. So the physical redemption, which we celebrate going out of Egypt, right? That's taken place already. But we won't have finished the redemptive process, right, until the Shekhinah comes to rest on the Mishkan, right? And the Shekhinah resting on the Mishkan, I've said this before, and I will probably say it again at some time in the future, but when a husband and wife are married, maybe this is an appropriate conversation for tonight, they have Sheva Brachos, 7 days of meals, right? Which people are doing the 7 blessings that are part of the wedding, and giving the chassan and kala brachas and bringing them joy. And people make speeches during this time in the process of bracha, and there's always one speech, always comes up the same speech, and it's about men and women, and a hope that they will build a home, a holy home within Klal Yisrael. Right. And there's a discussion about what is a home. Right? And inevitably, the example that's given is the Mishkan. Right? That the our home is like a mini Mishkan. Right? We have our table in which the bread is set. We have our food and things, which should be a kind of korban. That, remember, the korban was eaten. Most korbanot were eaten right, by the people who brought them. Right? And there are many examples given about how the home is a mini Mishkan. Right? And we know that Yiddishkeit is only a small part of Yiddishkeit is practiced in the shul. You know, that what a Jewish home is about is really the center of all of it. It's not the shul. But this is actually a misrepresentation of what the real wish should be. Because the Mishkan itself, right, is not the example. The Mishkan itself is an example of something that came before. The Mishkan itself is a recreation of the tent of Sarah Imenu. What were the brachas of the tent of Sarah Imenu? Remember, these brachas disappeared and came back when Rivka came, right?
The bread never went bad.
Bread never went bad. Anybody know another one?
The candles are always lit. And
candles stayed lit, right?
Yeah.
And what hovered above it?
And the clouds of the Shekhinah was above
right,
it.
right. So
When
what
she
was
died,
it?
it
The
went
bread
bad.
was fresh and very nourishing for the whole 7 days, right? The menorah, the candles, did go out, right? And the Shekhinah hovered over
It's a place
the tent of
infinity.
right? It's a place of meeting. It's a tent of meeting.
And when she died, it went away, and then Rivka came back.
That's right. When Rivka came back, these miracles continue again, which was a sign to Yitzchak, of course, that the correct decision had been made.
In her tent.
Right? So, what we really should be wishing, right, is a return to the tent of Sarah, the first meeting place that we had with God, and that's what the Mishkan is. Right? And this tells you a great deal about the Jewish family, right? How critical it is. It's not about priests getting together, you know, and slaughtering animals and stuff, right? It's actually about trying to recover this status, right? And that's what happens at the end of Pirkei, at the end of Shmos, is the last thing you'll see is let's see, my memory is good, right? Okay, so here we are, right? This is Shmos, right? This is the end, this is the beginning, right? So let me read the end, right? And the cloud covered the tent of the appointed meeting, and the glory of God filled the dwelling place. Moshe was unable to enter the tent of appointed meeting because the cloud had rested on it, and the glory of God filled the dwelling place. When the cloud rose from over the dwelling place, the children of Israel would set out on all their journeys. For if the cloud did not rise, they would not set out until the day that it did rise. For the cloud of God was over the dwelling place by day, and there was a fire inside it by night, before the eyes of the entire house of Israel throughout their journeys. And so ends the book. It tells you the redemption is complete when we have returned to this level of the Abbas. So let's talk about something, and that's why the Mishkan is so important, is because it is a tool for doing that. Right? It's called a tent of meeting. Okay? You know, it's not a union meeting hall. It's the meeting. Yeah. So I want to read a little bit from Rav Adelstein about the Kruvim. The Kruvim are very, very interesting. The Kruvim are translated sometimes in English as the cherubim, the two forms that are made and part of the top of the Aron.
It's the lid, right?
God,
the lid of the Aron in one piece.
That's right, it's one piece.
One
right?
piece.
And that God would speak to Moshe Rabbeinu from between the Kruvim. And interestingly enough, this is a theme that you'll see throughout the vessels of the Beis Mikdash, and by the way, Pesach as well. You'll see is going to. There's a theme of oneness. Right? Obviously, the easiest way to make the box in which the Ten Commandments are going to be kept, the Aron Kodesh, would be you make the box, you put the top on, and then you put the statues and weld them on. Torah specifically says you are forbidden to weld them. It says, get yourself a big chunk of gold. Really big, right? It has to be big enough so that it is the length and width of the box, right? But it also has to be as high as the top of the kruvim.
Yeah,
Now get yourself a hammer and chisel, right? Hammer and chisel, right? And start cutting out the kruvim from the top, right?
Wow.
Right.
The weight would be astronomical.
I'm sure it was heavy,
Yeah.
right? But why do this, right? You may remember they have the same problem with Moshe has the same problem with the menorah. And he says, I don't understand this, right? And it says that God shows him the menorah in fire, right? In the end, God makes the menorah.
Because he pulls it out, right?
Yeah,
He
right.
throws it in
Which, by the way, interestingly enough, has the same thing happens with the golden calf.
golden calf, and it jumps out.
Right. It comes out complete. Right. Gold gets thrown into the fire, the calf comes out.
Well,
walking
that
on the fire.
medallion, that thing got thrown in the one
Yeah.
from
We'll
Joseph.
talk about this when we get further along.
Are tefillin made out of one piece of leather?
Tefillin? It's a very interesting point. Yes, the base and
Because it's a yoke that we put on.
Right.
It's
interesting. It's
That's an interesting way
yeah.
of looking at it, yeah.
Yeah.
One piece of feather.
Yeah, it can't be. It shouldn't be made from individual pieces put together. It's one piece of oxen
They molded
that is molded over a long period of time. Yeah.
principles.
Yeah. But it's an idea of oneness. So let's talk about the kruvim.
Okay.
We will only understand the kruvim by starting at the core and working out from there. The kruvim sat on top of the aron. It in turn housed the luchos, the tablets. Right? Those luchos provide the key to all that surrounded them. They symbolize, of course, the totality of the Torah. The two tablets are physical representations of our receiving the Torah directly from Hashem. Just one note is that last week, what we did was deal with the elements of Mishpatim that come from the last 5 commandments, which are the commandments on the right side, so to speak, of the tablets, right? Which are between man and man, right? On the left side are the ones we're dealing with now, which are between man and God. And coming back to the theme we've been talking about all night, is what's the one that's out of place there? What? No, of the 10 commandments. Yeah, there's 5 commandments on one side, 5 on the other.
Keep the No, it's in the Shabbos one. The first one is there will have no gods before me.
Yeah.
I am your Lord, your God. There are no gods before me. What is the next one? Is that's honor your mother and father. Wait, honor your mother and father is that's the one that stands out. Yeah, that's one. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, you know the gods before me. Don't take my name in vain.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Right. The 5th one is honor your mother and father.
Yeah.
That's entirely about relationships between man and man.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't mention God.
Yeah.
Right. Honor your mother and father. Right. No, it belongs where it is because the relationship between mother and father, as we talked about earlier, right,
It's also with him and God.
is a metaphor for the relationship that we have with God.
That's where
That's why it's on that side. So this week we're dealing with the first 5. Right? The Aron represents how we continue to host that Torah. It is made of gold and wood. In incorporating the Torah within our own lives, the message of Torah is challenged by many manifestations of evil. We are instructed that nothing less than the purity of gold will suffice to meet the challenge. Half-hearted measures will fail. Insipid, watered-down approaches will not stand up to the ravages of evil. Right? Gold is also a material that doesn't oxidize easily, right? Unlike other materials. Resistance to evil, however, cannot be static. Life in its rich complexity demands of man that he forever change and grow. Thus, the other ingredient of the Aron between the gold is wood. Right? Wood is a living thing, which brings to mind the organic development and growth of a tree, alive, growing, forever pushing higher and higher. What then is left for the kapporos, for the cover of the Aron, which is treated in the text to as much detail as a separate kli? That is to say, there's so much time devoted to the top of the Aron that it has as much space as the whole menorah.
Wow.
Right, that's given, right? And it's only just part of it. It's the top of a box. Right? A rich assortment of words, all derived from the same root, including those for pitch, village, lion, leader, and atonement. These all share the theme of covering, protecting, and guarding. In our section, the Kapporos, this is Hirsch really at his best, right? He's looking at the Hebrew language carefully. In our section, the Kapporos is the covering placed atop the Aron to protect it. The Kruvim are not separate items secured to it, but are hammered out from both ends of the Kapporos. So they're sculpted, really. As integral parts of the cover, they tell us something about how we are to protect Hashem's message contained in the Aron underneath. Their physical arrangement tells us of at least two different kinds of protection. Their unswept wings hover over the Aron, shielding it. We are required to do the same by creating protective legislation to safeguard the Torah's statutes. These are fences around the law. They are gezeras, they are walls that Klal Yisrael lovingly sets up to ensure against violation of Hashem's commandments. So if they have wings, normally when we see things with wings, the wings are folded down or they're stretched out. But in this case, the wings come over the head of the Kruvim and almost touch each other, right there like this. I can't really do it very well, but you get it, right?
Yeah. Like
Okay.
a talus.
What?
Like a talus.
No, because they go in front of the...
Lean forward like this.
Yeah, they're
like
actually...
they look like this.
It's as though a bird is covering its head,
Take
not
his
just
wings
here,
and
but
go
in
tips
front.
like this.
Right.
But they're going like this and leaning like this. This is
Yeah.
and they look at each other.
Yeah.
I've always felt that the talus enfolds us before we put on the tefillin. There's something about that.
Oh, it does. Those are actually the words of the prayer.
Is it?
Yeah. It's we'll talk about it some other time, but the whole question of my friend Simcha Yakovovich once pointed out to me that if you look at your shadow when you're wearing a talus and tefillin, it could be mistaken for horns and a tail.
I never thought about that.
It's true. I noticed it actually, because usually we don't daven outside. Right? Simcha happened to be, I think it was in Alaska or Northwest Territories where it's sun all the time, and he saw his shadow, right? And he realized that it explains some of the mistakes that people have made in the past about us, because you have this projectile here, right? And a tail from the talus behind. Interesting. Sorry, we'll move on. That one was for you. Okay. Their physical arrangement tells us at least two different kinds. Okay. At the same time, the gaze of the Kruvim is directed downwards. Towards the Kapporos shall be the faces of the Kruvim. So they're looking down at the cover. The Torah instructs us about another layer of protection. The Torah needs to be understood. We have to direct our mental concentration at it, carrying out its precepts with intelligence, not simply by rote. Right? So it's saying that they're looking into where the Torah is kept. They're not looking outward, they're looking down. Right? When we look at other appearances of the Kruvim in Tanakh, we realize that they fall into two groups. Some simply protect, like those appointed to stand guard at the entrance of Gan Eden, also called Kruvim, right? Others, however, have very different function. In Yehezkel, Kruvim bear the presence of God. David describes Hashem as Yoshev HaKruvim, and placed on the Kruvim. In these instances, we see the Kruvim as carrying God, the glory of God. We note again that the Kruvim were not separate items affixed to the top, the Kapporos. Rather, they seem to grow out from the Kapporos itself, the article that immediately stands over and preserves the tablets of the law. The Torah tells us about the consequences that organically grow out of guarding and protecting the Torah. By doing this, we become Kruvim of the Torah ourselves, in both of their roles, guarding and protecting. In the course of protecting the Torah, we protect ourselves as well. And by taking upon ourselves this task, we merit becoming bearers of Hashem's presence. Mm-hmm. The posture of the cherubim suggests such a function. The cherubim do not simply spread their winged blanket above the Aron. Rather, their wings sweep up and out, as if forming pedestals to bear something placed on them from above, which we understand to be the divine presence. Right? So that the wings are, if the heads are here, the wings are above the heads and almost touching. Mm-hmm. As if to be another platform on which something you could rest, mm-hmm. where the wings are almost touching. Right?
They have a picture in the Hamash too. I was seeing.
It shows it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. In effect, the Aron is a mini Migdash. By making a sanctuary, Hashem promises here as well that I will dwell among them. Right. Remember the expression when God tells Moshe to build the Mishkan. Mm-hmm. He says, "Build for me a Mishkan so that I can dwell in them."
Mm-hmm. The Mishkans, building Mishkans in them.
It's a mistake, right? It's a grammatical error. It's a singular Mishkan, so it should be dwelling in it. Yeah. Build for me a Mishkan so that I can dwell in it. That's the correct pronunciation, right? Or build for me Mishkans so that I can dwell in them. To say, build for me a Mishkan so that I can dwell in them, doesn't work, right? So what we understand from this, right, is the them is Klal Yisrael. Us. The Mishkan is a tool, right, for God's dwelling in us. Right? That's what the purpose of the Mishkan and the Mikdash is. Build for me this place. Right? It's a meeting place for me with them. It's not as though God is not, 20 miles away from the Mishkan, and he's got to run back to the Mishkan when you call him. No, he's everywhere. Mm-hmm. But it's a place created for this linkage, for this place where man and God can actually come into direct contact. Mm-hmm. So build this for me, and I will dwell in them. That's the term, right?
So there must be something special in building this house, this unity, so that God then comes and blesses the Jewish people.
For sure. I'm not going to go into all the details tonight, but absolutely, yeah. By the way, so much so that when the second temple was being built, we're coming up to Purim now, right? And just before the Purim story, they had begun to build the second temple. And after Purim, under Darius II, they completed the building of the temple. And they began under Cyrus and completed under Darius II, and had to pause during the life of Achashverosh. And that's a story in itself, which we maybe should touch on a little bit before we're done. I lost my train of thought. Oh, the structure. You're right, the structure. Okay, got it. Came back. My train of thought has returned. So when they were building the second temple, there were a group of Kohanim and Leviim who had separated themselves from everybody and gone to the island of Jerba off the coast of Tunisia. And they had lived there as close to ritual purity as they could. And so Ezra and Nehemiah
asked them to come back, right?
Sent for them to come to Israel to serve in the rebuilt temple. By the way, one of the gates of the original temple still is in their synagogue in Jerba. It still exists from the first temple period. And in fact, there was a major terrorist attack on them about 10 years ago. I forget the name. The temple, the synagogue has a very specific name built around this. The wall of the synagogue is the door. right, is the gate. That's my understanding. I've never been there. But when they came back, this is just a reference to your comment about the specifics of it, they came back and they examined the plans for the new building of the Beis Hamikdash, and they said, no, we're not coming back. This is not the way the temple should be built. And they went back home. And Ezra cursed them, and they cursed Ezra, and it was a whole series
It's a whole bunch of things.
Unpleasant things. We can talk about it down the road, but it was because it had to be, the dimensions and everything had to be very exacting. By the way, interestingly enough, just a side note of Ostriker's trivia, is that the temples of the Shinto religion are built to the same specs.
Dimensions?
Dimensions,
the
yeah,
same as...
relationships as the temple was.
You're talking the X...
Right.
The
and they claim that there's a
depth.
relationship now.
The width, the height, and the depth.
I guess so.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
To what? In relationship to what? To the Mishkan?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh my.
And to the Mikdash.
The Mikdash.
Temple itself. Anyway, these are all little side notes.
Cool.
We're getting off topic. Let's go back to Rav Hirsch. When we look for other appearances of Kruvim, we realize they fall into two groups. Some simply... Okay, wait a second. We read that already? Sorry. Okay. Those two Kruvim represent a Klal Yisrael vigilant in safeguarding the Torah through preventive devices and serious study. Through this, they become the bearers of the presence. We have only to find the reason for one last detail concerning the Kruvim. Why two rather than one? The answer in part may lie in the contents of the Aron that each of the two Kruvim peered down at. The luchos were placed in the Aron side by side, one next to the other. In effect, each keruv safeguarded one of the luchos. As the two Kruvim turned to each other, they symbolize the complete interdependence of the two luchos, or more accurately, of the mitzvahs between man and God, the mitzvahs between man and man. Klal Yisrael becomes a bearer of Hashem's glory only when it pays steadfast attention to the demands Hashem placed upon them as its sovereign, and is equally fastidious in responding to the needs and the concerns of all its members. Only by serving both of these goals is the Torah protected and a place readied in the hearts of man for his great presence. Now, interestingly enough, there's just one little side note that I wanted to close with, and that is that the luchos traveled with the Mishkan. Seems obvious, right? The Aron traveled. And it says that Har Sinai, the holiness left Har Sinai. It had always been a holy mountain when the luchos left. Its purpose for existence was the luchos itself. Visiting the Har Sinai today has no particular kedusha attached
Just
to it.
assuming you want to find it, but yeah.
Right. If you find it, right? Has no particular kedusha attached to it. But there is a place that does have kedusha attached to it. Right? Temple Mount. And one of the indications of this was that Shlomo HaMelech, when he built the temple, and he wasn't just building it with his own genius, it was Ruach HaKodesh, right? And the plans had come from his father, and Shmuel, the prophet Samuel, was that he built another set of Kruvim. So if you read about the inauguration of the temple in Kings, you'll see that it refers to the second set of Kruvim that were built by Solomon, King Solomon, Shlomo Melech. So what is the significance of this? It's curious, right? You have the Kruvim that God required on top of the Mishkan. What's this about? Right? And this is about something that we can come to understand very well. Wherever the Aron rested was a holy place, as long as the Aron rested there. When the Aron moved on, it was just a place that the Aron had been. It was nothing significant. One exception is the Temple Mount. The Temple Mount was a holy place by itself, of its own nature, long before Har Sinai, long before the giving of the Torah. And we know that it's the place of the Akedah. Right?
It's also the foundation stone.
It's the foundation stone. It's it's the place where Abraham and it's the place where Noah brought sacrifice. Everybody brought to
he was laying
Har HaMoriah.
He was laying down and saw the dream for it's Isaac. So it's laying down and saw the dream with the ladder.
No, that's Yaakov.
Yaakov.
That's Yaakov, right. So all of these things are connected. So the Temple Mount always had this holiness, still has it, and will always have it. Always, right? Because one might say to yourself, well, why aren't people fighting over, a mountain in the middle of the Sinai desert? Why are they fighting over this? And keep in mind that, Jerusalem, if there was nothing there, nothing was ever built there, right? It's kind of a desert place. It's not a fertile or particularly, but people have been fighting over this piece of land as long as anybody can remember. A piece of land that David bought, right? It seems the things we buy are the ones that are most questioned, right? Hebron and Yerushalayim. But Shlomo understood this because the holiness of the second set of Kruvim are built into the nature of the floor itself, right? Right? They are built into the floor of the Temple Mount. Right? Building Kruvim that would travel from place to place as on pedestals, right, would have no value at all anywhere else in the world. Right? So the Kruvim had to be built as part of the lid of the Aron. Right? In Jerusalem, right, the holiness of the Temple Mount exudes from the location itself, regardless of whether the Aron is there at the time, which is why it is the place where the Aron should be, and you double you're bringing the object to the holiness itself at that point. And then you have an element of time and person as well. You get to Yom Kippur. Yes.
Are you sort of saying that on the place of the Temple Mount is a place where laws that direct man to man and man to God are rooted there? Is that what you're indicating?
It's an interesting. I wasn't getting to that. It's an interesting statement, and it takes a lot of thought before I would say yes to that, because, those laws are given in the wilderness, right? And the Torah is given in the wilderness for a very specific reason. It's given in a place that's owned by nobody, because those things are intended for everybody, as opposed to when we talk about Ki Mitzion Tetzei Torah, that the Torah will go out from Zion, right? We're then talking about Torah Baal Peh more than anything else, right? And that comes from Zion, right? So I'm not sure that I am saying that. What I'm saying is that there's a kedusha, a separateness, a holiness, a place of meeting between God and His creation, between the Creator and His creation, uniquely in that place. The other places where that happens is where the vessels are, right? So it can happen anywhere where the Aron is.
But Yiddishkeit, there cannot be a holiness and spirituality without halacha first.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, how does it begin? It begins with the giving of 10 laws, right? And from those laws we derive virtually everything else, right? So I didn't mean to say that one was, but if you're asking me, is it a place of the originating of laws per se? Well, when they built the temple, right, which is a spiritual place in which miracles happen daily, right? It was also the place the Sanhedrin sat, right? The high court. You know, I mean, if you think about the equivalent,
that was adjacent to the temple. Or
it was part of the temple.
Part of the
temple complex. The chamber of stone.
Yeah.
Right. It was part of the temple.
There's a section where they,
right? And where the Great Sanhedrin sat, and where all major laws were adjudicated.
And then the chief priest would go into a room, and it was beyond time and space in that room. From what I remember, no.
You talking in preparation for Yom Kippur?
Yom Kippur, yes.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because
it's beyond the infinite.
The qualifications of a Kohen are entirely hereditary. Mm-hmm. Right? Now, one would hope that a Kohen Gadol would be a Talmud Chacham. Mm-hmm. Right? He doesn't have to be. Mm-hmm. He just has to be the son of a Kohen.
That's an interesting point.
Right? So that when the time of Yom Kippur came, if the Kohen was a Talmud Chacham, then the period of time in preparation for Yom Kippur was a period of time of great learning and excitement. And if not, then the wise people of the Sanhedrin used to teach him and quiz him and keep him awake, lest he fall asleep and in some way become impure at the last moment, that he would have an emission which would make him impure. So they would keep him awake and keep him focused on Torah, because he didn't have to be a Talmud Chacham. It wasn't a requirement, interestingly enough. But he was surrounded by people, you know. Yeah. I mean, again, it comes to this question of the merging of two different qualities. One is of a spiritual connection, and the other is of a wise and knowledgeable person in halakha. So that if a person has a white spot on their hand, a skin disease, which could be determined to be tsaras, a spiritual disease, a doctor can't help him. The only person who can recognize that tsaras is a Kohen. Now, what happens if you come to a Kohen who doesn't know anything about tsaras, and he's standing next to a Yisrael who's, the Rambam, right, and a great medical, knowledgeable person, right, and he looks at it, right, and the Rambam looks at it too, right, and the Rambam says, tsaras, right, has no value at all. But if the Rambam whispers to the Kohen, it's tsaras, the Kohen says, it's tsaras, now it is, right. It has to be spoken by the Kohen. Right? Obviously, it would be better if the Kohen was knowledgeable. But it's not required that he is. Right?
But didn't they have to do the spice thing, and if he made a mistake, he could die? I read it in the book.
We're talking about actually something that's... he had to do the avoda. Perfectly.
Perfectly,
right?
Yeah.
He was in a... this is the difference... And I'm not doing justice to it, but it's the difference of fooling around with 110, right, and fooling around with 20,000 volts, right. If you're fooling around with 20,000 volts, you better be dressed appropriately and have the right knowledge. If you're fooling around with 110, you're going to get a shock, but unless you're in the bathtub with a radio, you probably survive it. And that's what or maybe radioactive is more. But all those things sound destructive, they're not meant to be. But clearly, the Kohen had to be prepared and had to have the right state of mind and knowledge, right? But maybe the most important thing for the Kohen Gadol at this moment, in which he was going to the place of greatest holiness, with the vessels of greatest holiness, at the time of greatest holiness, there was a tremendous amount at stake. And if he had the slightest desire himself for this holiness, for his own benefit, he would not survive the day. Right? And so he would be dragged out by his belt.
They had a rope around his foot. Pull him out
by the rope, right? And during the Second Temple, this happened on a frequent basis.
Because there were people buying the...
it had become corrupt, and there were people buying it. There were, a high priest named Menelaus. Need I say more? So
Greek.
Yeah,
That's
that's right. That's my
Became
point.
Greek.
What
They were not
Jews.
They were not good. They were evil.
So, we have, unfortunately, we have the problem today.
Yeah.
Where people who are born with the privilege and the responsibility of being Jewish, right, would opt for to be anything but, right? And of course, it's we should be thankful that God believes in waiting a long time. Right? Eternity is a very long time. But we should finish with some good thoughts, right? And the good thoughts are, we're learning about the vessels of the Mishkan, that we're building, a Mishkan so that God can dwell within them, meaning us, as we approach Purim, a time of redemption, a time of joy. We should have in mind that we're blessed with all these qualities, And one last thought that I want to remind everybody of is that it says with Adar, which we're already in now, right, our joy increases. Right? And people assume that it peaks at Purim. This is a mistake. Right? It peaks after. Did it shut off? Or it's okay?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. It peaks considerably after Pesach, right? Right? So we're just on a road going up right now. It's going to get better and better and better and better, right? So enjoy it, take pleasure in Purim, get ready for Pesach, right? Our liberation, our freedom. We're climbing the mountain. That's where we're going to be, right?
Yeah.
And this week we have Parsha Terumah. Good Shabbos, everybody.
Good job.